So I'm giving the participants here on a retreat a background to the great epic, the story of Rama. I began with Once Upon a Time, which is a good start for any story. Of course, the scene in this case begins not on earth, it begins in what we might consider heaven. I'm not saying there's a literal heaven, but bear in mind, it's a story. There is a certain personality, something like an ancient day version of Hitler, somebody who is a great meditator and through his power of concentration is able to control all the forces of nature that we know of and that we do not know of. The name is Ravana, and he is getting all his power from a cosmic mind. All our power comes from a cosmic mind. You think you have your own mind, but this is not true. You have only one cosmic mind. You think that you have multiple BBCs within you, but you don't. There's only one BBC, and we have local capacity to tune into it. So that's the first lesson we have to learn, that all of these stories with a philosophical and spiritual message all take into account that there is only one existence and one mind, one cosmic mind, and one universe. That's why I call it universe. There's only one. So all these great powers we have are because there are combined forces in the universe, invisible to us as underlying waves that when they come to the surface become our world of trees and flowers and suns and stars, tables and chairs and bodies, adult people, children, and teenagers chewing gum. All of this comes from one existence. We have to get used to that idea. The more we get used to that idea, the more the cloud of confusion will clear away and we get access to the most fundamental truths. And when we do that, we get to all the answers. There are primarily two diverse forces in the world. We can call them good and evil. Both are necessary. There are two things in our daily round of 24 hours, night and day. These are necessary. There are two things in the atomic structure. It's called a proton and electron, plus and minus. These are necessary. There are two hemispheres of the brain, left and right. These are necessary. All these poles of opposites are necessary because this is how nature works. So this great force for evil is ruling and dominating even the forces of nature, what to do. In a place called Ayodhya, there was an ancient king, Dasaratha. He was childless and therefore no successor. Here you have King Charles as a successor, male by tradition, even though there were female queens as well. And the last one passed away to great sorrow here, not only here, but internationally. And so the solution is that he holds a great sacrifice, a great way of moving the cosmic forces. And some sons are born to three queens. The most outstanding is called Rama. Rama is the embodiment of truth and beauty and justice and harmony. There is absolutely no fault with Rama. Rama is the ideal of perfection and is designed to be the king, succeeding his aged father Dasaratha. Now, all the preparations for that are taking place, and Rama is about to be made the king the following day. But in the internal chambers of the royal palace, a plot is brewing. Don't forget, three queens are there to ensure progeny, and they all have children now, and one queen is the favorite of the king. And she gets persuaded gradually, bit by bit. She loves her husband, she loves the other queens, she loves Rama, she loves all the sons. But her son is called Bharata, and she is persuaded by a maidservant. Look, Rama, the king, is about to be crowned tomorrow. Your own son is not. Your own son is in danger, because in the ancient days, even in the more modern times, if there's any rivalry in the royal situation, then you have to dispatch your rival. It happened in England. James II became a convert to Catholicism, and nobody liked him somehow. And so it was his daughter and son-in-law that plotted against him and ultimately overthrew him. And so William of Orange became your king here. And even going further back in history, you'll find that many successors to the throne, young children even, were put in a tower and murdered. So these are common plots all throughout the world. The Ottoman Empire is rife with them, and the ancient days were rife with them. But this only happens in kingdoms where there is an inherent sense of immorality, where power is everything. Human power, dominance, land ownership, all of this dominates. And so you can be as ruthless as you like if you have power. Power is wonderful in the right hands, in the hands of wisdom. But in the hands of ignorance, it becomes malicious, dangerous. This is what happened to the demon Ravana. And so Rama, the embodiment of virtue, is now persuaded, or not persuaded, he is ordered by a queen who is persuaded that her own son is in danger, and she will no longer be the favorite queen because Rama's mother will now gain dominance. So, jealousy. This is a human story where everything is going fine, and then something lurks, some suspicion, some doubt, some fear comes up in our own psyche and takes over, and we then become irrational. And the irrationality of it was to our demand from the king that he fulfill some promises he made on the battlefield when his wife, Queen Kaikeyi, rescued him and nursed him. And he said, I'll give you anything you like. I'll give you at least 2 substantial wishes. You can ask anything you like. I promise I will fulfill them. Now she asks, okay, on the eve of the crowning of Rama, I'm going to ask these 2 boons. One, that my son Bharata, instead of Rama, becomes the king. Secondly, that Rama is put into exile for 14 years. And the drama unfolds. King Dasaratha is extremely upset to the point of imminent death, but he has to fulfill his promise because truth triumphs. And the Indian national motto is Satyam Eva Jayati, truth alone triumphs. If you say something, you have to fulfill it, no matter how pleasant or unpleasant. This was the morality of the day. So in truthfulness, he fulfills his promise, and Rama goes off. And where we left it a few weeks ago in our unraveling of the story is that Rama, along with his brother Lakshmana, along with his wife Sita, and this is significant because he tries to persuade Sita to remain and look after the queens. And she has said, where Rama goes, Sita goes. Sita, where the husband goes, the wife goes. And this is a story of love. It's a story of tragedy. It's a story of optimism. It's a story of life where nothing is smooth. Only temporary moments of smoothness. Everybody in America seemingly wants to retire to Florida in the sunshine. But at the moment, Florida is a waterlogged place and the floods have killed many people. But let me adjust my statement. It's not the floods that kill people. People will live and people will die. But, floods happen, and people come and people go, and that's the fact of it. We don't like it, but there's a reason why we don't like it. Now, The charioteer now drops the party of three, drops them off, and they live with, for the time being, with the chieftain, who then arranges to row them across the river Ganga, and there they have to make their way. Now I'm going to jump through the story a little bit, because after so many, I'm giving an overview, and when we pick up the story again, we'll give it in more detail, of course, because it's a huge story. We've been at this for several weeks, many weeks actually, probably several months, and we're only getting to this part that I've told you now. So I'm giving you a vast overview, an eagle's eye view of the situation. So now they have to make their way, and they have many adventures on the way. But as it happens, one encounter is with Ravana's sister, and Ravana's sister is also the same kind of character, characterized as a demon, and is the embodiment of jealousy, and sees these unusual people with noble bearing in the forest living like hermits, and can't decide whether these are warriors or whether they are hermits, or what is it? Curious combination. And sees how Rama is so handsome. And so what happens? From jealousy comes desire. I want this man. So she has the capacity to transform herself into some beautiful form, approaches Rama, and flirts with him, basically. And Rama says, look, I'm married, see, there's my wife there. And his wife is more beautiful than beautiful, which again arouses jealousy. He says, look, I'm married. But half jokingly, Rama says, see, Lakshmana, he's a handsome man. Why don't you approach him? And so she approaches him, and he says, no, I'm here to protect Rama. Sita, I have to regard as my mother, and Rama has to regard as my father. I have my duty. I'm not interested. Back and forth she goes, until eventually she becomes a nuisance and transforms herself into a demoness and threatens their life. And out of a sense of protection, Lakshmana, who is an impulsive man, he cuts her nose off. Cutting her nose off is the thing you do to your enemies, traditionally, long back. And so she goes back to her brother, who happens to reside in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, as you know, exists as an island, as a big island state off the southern coast of India. There she complains to her brother and tells her the story, and he himself feels, having had a description of Sita, he himself wants Sita. So here we have the human story of jealousy, anger. We have the story of desire, passion, and when all of these emotions come up, we become irrational. So he hatches a plot. He gets his minister, Marichi, to disguise himself. He has magic powers. Disguise himself as a silver-spotted deer, and goes to the hermitage where these three are staying. And he knows that if he runs past the hermitage, Sita will clap her hands and says, oh, I want that deer. So beautiful it is. I want it as a pet. Please catch it. And Rama goes off, and he is unable to do it. Eventually, he shoots his arrow, wounds the deer, and then this demon reveals itself and cries out in Rama's voice, help, help. Lakshmana is there protecting Sita. He's asked, you protect Sita, don't move from your spot. But hearing Rama's voice, Sita implores Lakshmana, go and rescue, go and see. You're here to protect your brother. Go, go. And he says, no, I can't. And then the human factor comes out again. Sita says, oh, I see. Actually, you're happy for Rama to be in danger, and you actually want me. And that was a shameful statement, because Lakshmana never looked up. You can imagine three people moving off. And Lakshmana always keeps his eyes down The only thing he can see of Sita is his feet, is her feet. Anyway, he goes off, knowing that there's some difficulty, some plot. It's not actually real. This unreality has a name. We call this name Maya. We were discussing this at breakfast, and it's relevant today to explore what this means. In the meantime, knowing that Sita is there unprotected, Ravana, the demon, comes disguised as a monk. Yes. Described as a wandering hermit. Yes. Beware of people like me. So he comes and asks for some food. Now it's the tradition. You have somebody comes and begs food like this, a holy person, you have to give it. And she is persuaded to do that. He immediately seizes her out of the protection zone and takes her off on what is called a vimana, a flying chariot, takes her back. Now, of course, the rest of the story really is a mix of confusion, a mix of sorrow. Rama comes back, seeing that there is a plot, and he finds that Sita has been abducted. The love of his life has gone, and all the plot that arose in heaven, whereby the Lord of the universe himself comes to be born as Rama, a cosmic balancing power throughout history, now sees that this is going to lead to Ravana's destruction, and ultimately he gains local forces, monkey forces and so on, builds a bridge which can be seen today. That's why we know it's a history, and goes off and a big battle ensues, a huge drama unfolds. But before Ravana gets killed, and this is the culmination of the battle, Rama decides that he will sit down and implore the whole forces of nature, which he sees as divine, and sees this combined force of nature as a fortress itself, called Durga, and does a worship of Durga before the battle. This is the relevance of what we're talking about, the season that we mentioned when we began. And so he was the first to do a worship there to Durga, and it is said, started that tradition. Now, that tradition survives today, and we are now in 9 days of worshipful preparation culminating in what we call a puja, or a ritualistic ceremony that is designed to create the highest and the most noble result for humanity in a season which is autumn. The beauty where seasons start changing, and an opportunity for us to renew resolve in spiritual life. Last night, we decided all life is spiritual. And so to continue our journey in an optimistic and positive way with a philosophical understanding of why we view things as we view, and what is necessary to move on, and what form of protection we can have from the same forces that can offer destruction. And so for 9 days, called Navaratri, Ratri means night actually, so 9 nights, there is this celebration. It began on 26th of September, and so it's continuing today. It'll culminate in a few days' time. And so today is a significant day because today is a kind of preparation day for this great celebration, which we call Durga Puja. Now we have to understand a little bit of philosophy before we go on. So there was a term I brought up today, and it is a metaphysical term called Maya. How many people have heard of that term? Okay, then you can explain to me what is Maya.
That which is real, illusion.
Okay, illusion, that which is not real, and you're on the right track, but not quite. Okay. Yes, that which is not real, on the basis, we discussed it last night, on the basis that is not permanent. But of course it's real in a relative sense. This whole material world is a construction of things that we are not quite sure of, but we are sure when we bang our head against a wall and there's a bump and there's a lump and there's a pain that this is real. We can't say it's unreal. We can't say it's an illusion. But when you now start looking at it carefully, you'll find that this reality starts disintegrating bit by bit. And the way we learn to dissemble this and look at it more closely is called viveka, discernment. And is a fundamental thing that we have to cultivate. So let us talk about Maya. Now, Maya, nature, life, energy, these are all alternate terms for the same thing, just different aspects of the same thing. We've seen how powerful nature is, how powerful wind can be, how powerful sea can be. I once knew somebody in South Africa who was in the South African Navy. And I was very young, and we went to the beach. He was something like a cousin of a friend. We went to a beach, and I saw he never went in the water. I said, "Why not?" He said, "I'm in the Navy." I said, "That's the reason why I'm asking the question." He said, "No, I've seen what the sea can do. I have a fear of the sea. I'm in the Navy and I have a fear of the sea. I've been in a ship where I'm here and the wave is up there. And I've seen a tremendous destructive force and how the sea can simply toss a big tanker, a big ship about like a toy boat." And so this great force that we call Maya is naturally energetic. And all of nature's energy can be resolved to it. And there are different types of energies. No scientist can tell you what energy is. They can only tell you its effects, how to define such a thing. The best we can do is to say something moves something. See how many times we use something means we haven't a clue. All right. So, okay, something moves something. What is the something and what moves it? This is difficult to define, and it depends on which way you're looking at it. It's called relativity of perception. So that leads me to a story I told in Switzerland last. I began a series of talks with this story. It is written by a very famous person called A. Nani Mouse. And okay. All right. So it illustrates what I'm talking about. I suppose as a good story, we have to say once upon a time. And this is written, it's a poem, and it is written in the time of, say, King John. And King John was a bad king and was avaricious, and wherever he looked, he really was a land grabber. Now he came across a big abbey, and abbeys in the medieval times were not pristine place of worship. No worship took place, but they were also land grabbers. And he saw this huge wealth there in this abbey, and he was entertained because he's the king. So he had these golden goblets served and rich food, and he saw the vast lands full of deer, and he became obsessed with wanting this. So he said to the abbot, "I'm the king, and I want this land. You look after yourself." And he saw the look of disappointment on the abbot's face, but he knew that he had the power. So he says, "All right, you can keep everything, golden goblets, land, everything, if you can answer 3 questions. And I'll give you 2 weeks. You come to London, and there, if you manage to answer these 2 questions, you can keep everything. But if you fail, then I have to take over." So the first question was, how long does it take to travel around the earth? I don't know. In those days, how do you know? Secondly, what am I the king worth? It's a very, very tricky political question. And then the third question, when we meet, you have to tell me, what am I thinking at that time? You know, three impossible questions. And so the abbot was very worried. He couldn't think how to get out of this. And so he thought, let me put an advert out to the wisest people in the land and see if anybody can answer these questions. Then maybe a combination of scientists, philosophers can come up. Then maybe I'm saved, but I really don't have much hope. And anyway, the story goes, a shepherd came and said, I'll answer the questions for you. The abbot thought, anything is worth a try. And the shepherd said, only under one condition. And of course, the abbot had promised land and property and wealth and so on to anybody who could answer these questions. He said, I'll go to London on your behalf, but one condition, you give me your clothing. I'll dress up like you. And they will think that I am you. And so he goes off to London. Well, revered abbot, what is the answer to your first question? First question is, how long does it take to travel around the earth? Well, Your Majesty, if you start with the sun and travel with the sun 24 hours. You can't argue with this. Okay, fair enough. Second question, what am I worth? Your Majesty, you're worth 29 pieces of silver. 29, is that all? Well, Jesus was sold for 30, we'll just make you one less. Is that okay? All right, can't deal with that one. All right, what am I thinking now? Your Majesty, you're thinking I'm the abbot and I'm not, and he threw off his hood. So things are not quite what they seem. They're not quite what they seem to be. And so there's a combination of things. We deal the world through the sense organs, but these are limitations. We do not see the world as an owl sees it. We don't see the world as a dog sees it. A dog sees things in monochrome. We see things in color. We were saying this morning, you look at the sky, it is blue. Is it blue? Or we are just adjusted to shorter wavelengths and our brain sees blue. Is there such thing as a time? We were discussing yesterday. We think time is real. We think it's like a train. You start here and you end there. We're on a journey. But actually, when you look at it properly, we're all looking at things in the past. It takes 8.5 minutes for the sunlight to reach us from the sun. We're all seeing each other in the past. It's not quite what it seems. According to modern science, most of us, all our bodies and so on, tables, chairs, and so on and so forth, are really empty space with a few visiting satellites. We were describing this morning that we think this universe is so vast, we can't see an end to it. There's a James Webb telescope that sees things much clearer, seeing these very ancient galaxies, simple galaxies. It's going back, way, way back, crystal clear images, using, of course, screening out things in the way, infrared. We can't see in the infrared. So it's producing images which are not there as the eye sees it. They're there as if we saw in the infrared, and we cannot. We can't see infrared, we can't see ultraviolet. Our range is 7 colors. That's it, nothing more. So our mind interprets these things. And we were saying this morning that psychologists are famous for presenting images. You can look at it one way, it looks like a young woman. Look at another one, it looks like the face of an old lady. You look at something like a candle frame, it could be 2 faces on either side, or it could be a candle illuminating. So we know these tricks are being played where the brain superimposes something from its experience, looks at it one way, and depending on which dominates, the left or right hemispheres of the brain, We make our interpretation based on our experience. We have our internal previous library. We bring these things out. But the point is, things are not what they seem. If we were bacteria, trillions and trillions of bacteria reside in your body. We don't like to look at it. It spoils human relations when we look at that, when we think of that. So this misleading view of the universe has a functionality. Without this misleading, we would not be able to form relationships. We would not be able to work in a practical sense in the world. We would not fall in love. We would not have children. None of this would happen if we saw the world in its true perspective. You know the story, isn't it, of how people form a relationship and fall in love. There's a reason why we say fall, by the way. So it's because over expensive dinners with cheap lighting called candles, we gaze into each other's eyes, that is, we admire each other's molecules and start talking and start endorsing the reality of the scene. We forget that the person that we're speaking to walks around with a septic tank inside them. We forget the fact that there are trillions and trillions of bacteria who, from their point of view, half a micron by 1 micron is a thousandth of a millimeter, will see a vast universe called your body and have a sense of wonder about it, perhaps. And we made a joke this morning and see something whizzing by. Oh, what is that? You see, it's a blood corpuscle, like a comet. See, such a wonder. So there's a relative perception. What is called Maya means looking at things through a certain lens with a certain interpretation and coming to a wrong conclusion. And Maya is inscrutable. What is modern science studying today? It is this Maya. And Maya etymologically can come from a term to measure. That means in order to measure something, in order to assess something, like a table here, we have to have a spatial awareness. And we also have to have a temporal awareness. Space and time are necessary. This table is not moving. Because of this, I can see you moving. I can see the contrast. This table occupies a certain space. But then from an atomic point of view, it is all space. So an electron is supposed to move. The old model was, Niels Bohr's model was, something like a solar system. Electrons nicely, neatly walking around in various layers. Just like we have Mercury and we have Mars, all in their own orbit. And a central thing, like a proton, a sun. We know this is not true. It's good for a conceptual understanding, but it's not true. What is an electron? An oscillation in Hilbert space. It doesn't tell you anything. It's gobbledygook. We don't understand what it is. We only see the effects of these things. That's all. A proton is made from quarks. Whoever has seen a quark? Nobody. So there are mysterious levels at the fundamental layer, at the fundamental substratum, which we have no idea about. We have no capacity to see them. We have a capacity to infer from them, and we have a description in a mathematical formula, which is entirely abstract. So underneath everything, we can view it as something like a wave system. And I was saying today, John Wheeler, the great physicist, had some conceptual idea about it, because at the bottom of everything, there are virtual particles, virtual because we can't see them, and virtual because we can calculate them, and we know they appear and disappear, and therefore not real. So last night we said, when we say unreal, we are really saying impermanent. We're saying things appear and disappear. And I gave the example last night of an elephant suddenly appearing and suddenly disappearing. You won't take it to be a serious thing. You won't take it to be a reality. And so there are many descriptions in the Vedanta, we described what Vedanta was last night in the Vedanta philosophy that illustrate this Maya. And when we say Maya, don't forget, it is nature itself, and it is very powerful. It is in our favor or against it, depending on how we think, depending on our reaction. Last night I said, the only person you can blame is yourself. You cannot blame anybody else. Blaming something else is just making a superimposition or making a covering because you don't want to blame yourself. It is a projection, projecting something that makes things acceptable to you, but not necessarily truthful. Oh, because the alternative is I'm a victim. I'm a helpless victim, and life is opposed to me, and my neighbor doesn't like me, and my neighbor doesn't like my neighbor's nose. And so what will my reaction be? I will put poison in their coffee, or I'll tell them, give them a piece of my mind, or it's some kind of thing. Some kind of reaction you'll cultivate. And the more you cultivate this reaction, which is not properly based, the more you're cultivating a habit. And the more you're cultivating a suction. Thought at the unconscious level is a suction. It draws people and places and events toward you. It creates your field of experience. What is the solution? Try to think differently. Now, if you think differently, you'll be enormously powerful. So, the culmination, this period we're in, can sometimes be called Durga Puja, or this 9 days. It culminates in a Durga Puja. Just as Rama's preparation for combating Ravana is to clarify the mind, to gather all the cosmic forces to him, and it succeeds. So let us go to mythology. In mythology, we start with, and mythology has a philosophy behind it. We use mythology to explain things in an easy story form, like a parable, but we can't leave it there. We have to see what is the deeper meaning of it. And when we become mature, we leave the childish points of view behind, and we now take on an innocent childlikeness. There's a difference. And that has to be cultivated. We have to step down from, I am so-and-so. So one of my favorite phrases is somebody who says, I'm humble and proud of it. So there's a contradiction in terms, see. Now we have the capacity and the opportunity. Opportunity, time itself presents us with the opportunity to insert a chosen ideal that is away from an egocentricity, a point of view that says me first, others later, and this is called biological survival. That's all. Struggle and survival. That is a materialist point of view, but we know that we can shatter all materialism. Modern science has shattered the whole philosophy of materialism, and yet you have scientists who are hanging on to it, combating it, resisting it. Materialism is gone. It's finished. It went in 1905. In 1905, Einstein, being open to these cosmic ideas, understood that space and time are two sides of the same coin and cancel each other out. But if you cancel away, if you take away space and you take away time, what do you have? Do you have a nothingness? Or do you have an unseen absolute? Do you have something that is an infinite invisible? If you take away space, then you have the undivided. It is space that divides things. If you take away time, you take away change. But who can ever conceive of a changeless condition, or a timeless condition, or an undividedness, or a unity? Yet we have a drive toward it, a drive toward unity. And with that drive, we start. So these 9 days, they are divided. And they are divided in such a way that for the first time, for many people, we have the opportunity to view the highest possible conceivable principle, energetic principle that we call life, that we call nature, that we call energy, is a mother. And so instead of saying our father, we can say our mother. And I think for some reason, almost randomly, I came up with the Christian prayer revised. That could be useful. So let us try and revise it according to a deeper understanding and a more emotionally connected understanding. Why is that? Because if religions are saying that God is love, the highest human example of it that we know of is motherly love. A mother will dash out and save the child, risking her own life, will jump into the mouth of a lion to save the child. There's nothing more nurturing than a mother's love. Whether you got on personally with your mother or not, the quality of motherly love is the highest. So we can view things in a different way. A father could be judging, could be punishing, but a mother, no. Mother is always forgiving in terms of motherliness, nurturing. So that gives us a different perspective. Instead of fighting tooth and nail, instead of rending things asunder, instead of fighting with nature, we can consider it in a different way, that nature is our helpful mother, leading us by the hand toward a central goal of unified freedom. What a beautiful idea. And if we study religion in its ancient modes, we will see that mother worship was the primary worship. As fertility, we see the effigies of the fertile mother, a pregnant figure. We see that mother worship was really the fundamental concept of something beyond our understanding that comes to us manifest as nature. The force behind all the forces is in our favor. It is only when Darwin comes on the scene that he sees nature as something that is rough, something that is crude, something we have to struggle with, competition, struggle, survival of the fittest. All of these terms come up from the Darwinian model of evolution. Is there a better way to understand it? Supposing we think that what we call nature is a flow, and a flow has a purpose. When a river flows, it wants to get to the sea. It has a flow, it has a direction, it has a current. Rivers flows directionally. Supposing we think that nature is a flow like a river, and no doubt there are obstacles in the way, but a river, being fluid, will take any shape it wants and can maneuver around any obstacle. And if you put a dam there to stop the water, create a water reservoir, at some point or other you'll have to resist the flow. Some point or other you'll have to open the floodgates. And even if it is a permanent reservoir with no floodgates, the sun has a capacity to take up the moisture and form clouds, and it forms as rainfall and lands somewhere else, maybe the other side of the world. So water is life. Now, supposing the ocean represents the absolute condition. The absolute condition is the wrong word. We're using relative terms for something is beyond our concept. Supposing the ocean represents the absolute, the depth of perfection and infinitude, undividedness, a condition, we'll use the word again and apologize for it, of unchanging. Supposing it is infinite, supposing it has no time, no space, no evolving part, no evolution in time, and no moving parts in space. That's our ocean. That ocean being fundamental is our own true nature. We are that. Because the one thing, and we discussed this at breakfast, you cannot deny. You can deny anything you like, but you cannot deny your own existence. I exist is a fundamental point of view. You can never imagine yourself dead, ever. You can test it out. Oh, I dreamt I was dead. Okay. I dreamt I was laid on a slab. Who was watching it, please? You yourself were watching it. You can't destroy that. There'll always be a seer. There will always be a witness to events. And when there's nothing to see, there's no witness, because a witness requires two things: something to see and something that is seeing. And so if all of that disappears, and the closest understanding we have to it is a dreamless sleep, where we don't see anything, we register there's a peace, but something still is watching it. There's still an object, peace. So something is there, but when all of that goes, supposing all of that goes, then there's just an absolute. And all we can say about it is existence itself, not non-existent. It exists. It is pure consciousness, because it knows it. We know it manifests as consciousness, objectively as awareness, and subjectively as a knower. When you explore the whole point, the whole investigation of what is consciousness, you have to ask the question: who knows it? Who is a knower? And from the knower, you come to consciousness itself, subjectively. And then that manifests. There must be a connection. So it is consciousness itself. That explains why things look designed. It explains why things have a rhythm. It thinks why things have an inbuilt correction mechanism. Every cell of the body has an inbuilt correction mechanism. The 1970s said it's random mutation. The key to evolution is random mutation, genetic drift, etc. And we say no. The key to unfolding or evolution is the fact that there's an inbuilt intelligent mechanism that when there's an error in duplication, say of the DNA, when the RNA makes a mistake, all the different components of the cell rally together, as it were, and create a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and occasionally it escapes that correction mechanism, and occasionally appears as a Huntington's disease or some genetic thing. That's okay, but it's never in our favor. It is never for survival. It is never for perpetuation of the species. What is the success of evolution? Successful perpetuation of the species. An inner drive to replicate creation. We call it procreation. And continue. There's some inner thing that drives us forward toward perfection. In the same way, a river is driven toward a flow. And when obstacles are presented, it knows how to get around them. It continues its flow, producing maybe local eddies and currents on the way, but eventually its destiny is the ocean. And the ocean is made of water, and the river is made of water, and water is water, and there's no difference between the two. Only in its form, only in its function. But ultimately, water is water. Whether it comes from Lake Erie and goes over the Niagara Falls, and we say, and make a separation, it's the Niagara Falls. We don't say it's water, but actually it's water. And no matter where it flows, it's still water, regardless. So the essence of your destiny and the essence of who you are fundamentally is that is you. What is our mistake? Through space and time and function and causality, and through the mistake of seeing things in a very limited way, we say, I am so-and-so, my address is so-and-so, my email is so-and-so, my telephone number is so-and-so, I am a good person, I'm an honest person, and who are you? You say, well, my job is this, we'll describe something else, but we will never answer the question, who am I? Who are you? Because it's not interesting to most people. You say, who are you? I am the infinite invisible. I am the kingdom of heaven within. I am a water cannot wet me, and fire cannot burn me, and air cannot dry me. I am the absolute. I am pure consciousness, existence, and bliss. And somebody will say, all right, you're madhouse for you. Let me just talk to somebody else. They don't want to know that. They want to know what your job is, what your interests are, what your hobbies are, what your family is. Nothing about you, fundamentally. So that becomes a way of enforcing and underlining our difficulty in understanding the fundamental questions. And so this fundamental representation of the manifestation of that as energy, the thing that drives the river, the thing that makes things unfold, the thing that inserts a wish for fulfillment, the thing that produces a will to live, not just survive, but to live, the will to love, the will to appreciate cultural things, art and beauty, the will to figure out how things work, the capacity to do that. All of that comes because our fundamental nature is driving us toward a state of perfection, a state of ultimate supreme happiness that we call bliss. And as I said last night, I never met anybody who said, my goal is to be unhappy. Everybody wants to be happy, driven toward the supreme joy. But what's happening? If we use the analogy of river, instead of going directly to the ocean, we take an interesting turn. Oh, what about this? What about that? On Monday, I have to make my way to St. Pancras Station. Supposing I'm curious enough to see, well, wait, what does Newcastle look like? And then what does another place look like? And another place look like? And I think there are a number of stops on the way. Supposing I get off at every stop and have an excursion. You see, it might be a delightful diversion, but diversions are delaying things. Why don't I go to the same straight there? Is because I don't really understand the rewards of it. I don't understand the merit of it. I am attracted by, somebody said illusion, yes. I'm attracted by the mirage. I'm attracted by the thing that appears and disappears and goes away in no time at all. I'm attracted by all those things that I invest in and say, this will improve my life, and end up in disappointment, the final disappointment being death. So, can we get this immortality? Last night they began with that prayer. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyoti gamaya, mrijo amritam gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. What is our goal? Immortality. Will we get it at the end? No, we forgot. Water is water. You're already immortal. Taking on the mindset of mortality. Taking on the framework of, I am so-and-so. This is my identity. This is my body. Unfortunately, it doesn't look as good as it did 10 years ago. And it may not look as good as it is now, 10 years from hence. What a pity. We have many opportunities to say what a glory. So we start off with the glory of autumn. What a glory. We start off with a sense of appreciation. We look immediately, maybe even by steps, to the fundamental beauty behind the beauty. When we look at the blue sky, can it remind us of infinity and the beauty of it? When we look at a beautiful scene, can we not see the beauty of that scene? And last time I was here, we made this the theme, getting more appreciation from proper observation. Remember the formula, observation, appreciation, thanks. We'll reiterate this today. And this afternoon when we walk, we'll have an opportunity to pick that up nicely and review it and see how we're doing. So we start off on the 9 days. The first day we can say, you see, Shaila Putra, for those who understand that, it is dedicated to this motherly aspect which represents an aspiration, daughter of the Himalayas, daughter of the mountains, The mountain represents an aspiration. Can we get to the top? Mount Everest inspires us to climb, despite the difficulties. And then the next day, purity is emphasized. We have the mother as brahmacharini. That is, somebody who has now the determination, but now requires the practical purification process. Let me purify the mind. Purification means let me do away with selfishness. Let me engage in values and attributes and qualities which emphasize purity, my pure nature, my fundamental purity. And then we require certain qualities. The next thing we require is bravery and beauty, represented by the moon, Chandra. And then we have to see there's a creative power within us that can start stirring from this appreciation of beauty and this purity, and from the quality of strength. And that strength comes out. It comes out to appreciate the creative power everywhere. And when we appreciate the creative power everywhere, then we get protection. We no longer have to beg for protection. Now our thought itself becomes a protective force. We start engaging perhaps in the use of mantra. Mantra comes from the same root as manasa, mind, protecting thought. And that yields, that makes us an unparalleled fortress. The fortress which then starts becoming almost violent, almost obsessive toward all our enemies. The enemy is not your neighbor. Your enemy is not your government. The enemy is not your weather. The enemy is yourself and what's happening within. And in the Ramayana, we mentioned some of these enemies: jealousy, pride, lust, greed, hatred, anger. All of these are your enemies. And in the story of Rama, they come out personified as Ravana. But good triumphs always. And because this is nature's adjusting mechanism and revealing mechanism also. So when we say Maya, we're talking of three components. We're talking of the capacity of nature to hide her reality and persuade us that we're living, this is a reality. And that a projection, this is reality, we call rajas. First one is tamas. Second one we call rajas, that projection that persuades us that this world is real, even though it's a movie in motion. A set of individual pictures run at a speed that the eye can catch, and it looks like a continuum. Einstein calls it space-time continuum. It looks as if it's a continuing thing. It looks as if it's a reality. But if it's a movie and we're part of the movie, we should know the scenery is made from cardboard. We should know that the actors rehearse their lines. We should know that there are different roles to play. We should know that things come and go. We should know that scene 1 is followed by scene 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the curtains close. All this we should know. And so when we know this, it becomes for us a great fortress. And then we come to invocations to prepare the mind. We come to a set of enjoying the fruits of it also, and almost a kind of rebirth, where Mahagauri, as it's called, where our final demon, Mahishasura. Now this story is contained in what we popularly call the Chandi, or the Devi Mahatmyam, and this is a great, great epic work, a beautiful scripture dedicated to this God as a mother, a goddess. And there we see a number of multiple components. The first thing we see is this great nature, this great feminine force, as Maya. It induces, it has the capacity to induce sleep at the most fundamental, absolute level, and then produce all the phenomena that we see as the world. It is different from a creation story. It is a projection story, a manifestation story of scenes which appear and disappear. And within that drama, we have to do something about it. We have to be combative. We have to get our inner strength, get all the forces of nature combined, represented in the story as weapons. All the deities give weapons to combat this great Mahishasura. Mahishasura, Asura, demon. Sura, Asura are the opposite of a positive energy. And it's in the form of a buffalo that has the capacity to change its form. All our temptations, all our doubts, and all our fears take on multiple forms persuasively until we get caught in the trap and lose our perspective or our discrimination. And then the second section of this will be to do how the technique of how we combat this, how this evil shifts its forms, and how we're able to be alert and deal with them through our own psychology. And ultimately, it yields a praise where we say, what a glory, what a glory. Even the English weather is a glory, believe it or not. So we get this idea of purpose, strength. We get the idea of defeating our own internal enemies by our own power. But this is not an individual power. All this power is on loan to us. The power of speech is not us. Somewhere in our evolution, we developed this power of the vocal cords to speak and communicate, all in our favor. We don't digest our food. Some power does it, unseen and generally unthanked. Never goes on strike, always available to us. He doesn't say, I've been running this train called the human body for a long time, so now I'm going on a rail strike. Doesn't do it. So all of these devices are devices to assist us in revealing, and we use nature to do it. So we've heard about hiding, we've heard about projecting. What about revealing? It is this Maya itself that reveals. I heard somebody once say to me, we have to overcome Maya. What a stupid idea. Maya is the one that combats everything. It is through Maya that we overcome Maya itself. Maya is the revealing factor as well, when it is characterized by selflessness and sincerity. Well, we've exceeded our broadcast time, but we're going to carry on our discussion here locally, according to our program here. And so thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Guru Mahagat.
Guru Mahagat.